If we talk about Uganda, Uganda is a lovely country, lovely people, beautiful country, lovely people. They have very rich culture, they have very rich agricultural land, and Ugandan currency is Ugandan shilling. And Uganda, officially Ugandan name is Republic of Uganda. This country is a landlocked country in East Africa. Uh, the country is bordered to the east by Kenya, and north and south by Sudan, and west by Democratic Republic of Congo, to the southwest by Rwanda, and to the south by Tanzania. The southern part of the country includes a substantial portion of Lake Victoria, shared with Kenya and Tanzania. Uganda, in the African Great Lakes region, lies within the Nile Basin and has a varied but generally modified and equatorial climate. As of 2023, it was a population of around 49 million, uh, which 8.5 million live in the capital and largest city of Kampala. So if we will talk about their languages, they have English language, they have Swahili language, and by the religion, most of the people are Christian, and 84% people of Uganda, they are Christian, and 39% people are Catholic, and there are 13% people are Muslims, and 2% people, they don't have any religion. So their government is unilaterally a dominant party, President Republic. So their president name is Yoweri, and their vice president is Jessica, and their prime minister is Rubina. So they have a legislation system, and they have parliament, and the area of Uganda is 241,038 kilometers square. They have very good water in their land, 15% of water there. So their population is 47 million, and more than 47 million. So their GDP per capita is $3,222, which is 172nd largest in the world. So if we will talk about their currency, Uganda has Ugandan shilling currency, and they use driving left side driving. In Uganda, people drive the left side driving they use. So Ugandan calling code, country code is 00256, and in ISO 3166 code is UG. Internet TLD is UG, and Uganda is named after the Buganda kingdom, which encompasses a large portion of the south of the country, including the capital Kampala, and whose language Luganda is widely spoken throughout the country. From 1894, the area was ruled as a protectorate by the United Kingdom, which established administrative law across the territory. Uganda gained independence from the UK on 9 October 1962. So, when India got independence, it was 1947. So, in 1947, India got freedom from UK empire. So, Uganda got freedom in 9 October 1962. The period since then has been marked by violent conflicts, including an 8-year-long military dictatorship led by Idi Amin, and the official language is English, although the constitution states that any other language may be used as a medium of instructions in schools or other educational institutions, or for legislative, administrative, or judicial purposes as may be prescribed by law. Uganda, a central region based language, is widely spoken across the central and southeastern regions of the country, and several other languages are also spoken, including Etiso, Lengo, Achuli, Rinjoro, Rinjenkolo, Rukiga, Lau, Ruturu, Zambia, and Jupadola, and Lusago. In 2005, Swahili, which is foreign and so viewed as being neutral, was proposed as Uganda's second official language, but this has yet to be ratified by Parliament. However, in 2022, Uganda described to make Swahili a mandatory subject in the school curriculum. So, Uganda's current president is Yoweri, who took power in January 1986 after a protracted 6-year guerrilla war. Following constitutional amendments that removed term limits for the president, he was able to stand and was elected president in the 2012, 2011, and then 2016 to 2021 general elections. If we will talk about the Ugandan history, much of Uganda was inhabited by Central Sudanic, until 3000 years ago. According to oral tradition and archaeology studies, the Empire of Kitara covered an important and part of the Great Lakes area from the northern lakes Albert and Kyoga to the southern lakes Victoria and Tanga. Kitara is claimed as the ancient of the Toro, Ankolo, and Busogo kingdoms. So, if we will talk about the history of Uganda, some Luo invaded Kitara and assimilated with the Bantu society there, establishing the Bitu dynasty of the current Omukama ruler of the Bunyaro Katara. So, if we will talk about the Arab traders moved into the land from the Indian Ocean coast of the East Africa in the 1830s for trade and commerce. In the late 1860s, Bunyaro in midwestern Uganda found itself threatened from the north by the Egyptian sponsored agents. Unlike the Arab traders from the East African coast who saw trade, these agents were promoting foreign conquest in 1869. So, if we will talk about the seeking to annex the territories north of the borders of Lake Victoria and east of Lake Albert and south of, so British explorer Mr. Samuel Baker on a military expedition to the frontiers of northern Uganda with the objective of suppressing the slave trade there and opening the way to commerce and civilization. And that time the Bunyaro resisted Baker, who had to fight a desperate battle to secure his retreat. Baker regarded the resistance as an act of treachery, and he denounced the Bunyaro in a book. And later the British arrived in Uganda with a predisposition against the kingdom of Bunyaro and sided with the kingdom of Buganda. This would eventually cost Bunyaro half of its territory, which was given to Buganda as a reward from the British. Two of the numerous lost countries were restored to Bunyaro after independence. In the 1860s, while Arabs sought influence from the north, British explorers searching for the source of the Nile arrived in Uganda. They were followed by British Anglican missionaries who arrived in the Kingdom of Uganda in 1877 and French Catholic missionaries in 1879. This situation gave rise to the death of Ugandan martyrs in 1885 after the conversion of Mutisa. Much of his court and the succession of his anti-Christian son Mwanga. The British government chartered the Imperial British East Africa Company to negotiate trade agreements in the region beginning in 18. So they have started this company also in India before, and then they have started this East Africa Company. This was before East Indian Company. Then they started in Africa East Africa Company. From 1886, there was a series of religious wars in Buganda, initially between Muslims and Christians, and then from 1890 between Baingaliza Protestants and Bifranza Catholics, factions named after the imperial powers with which they were aligned. So, if we will read the study of India also, the Indian were also, Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus, they fought each other while they were under the British government that time. So same happens in 1866 in Buganda state. There was also Muslims and there were Christians and they fight each other. So these things tells that UK people, when they governed the system, when they colonized these Africans and Indians, they have done these things to make them fight each other. Yeah, it looks like this. So because of civil unrest and the financial burdens, IBAC claimed that it was unable to maintain their occupation in the region. So British commercial interests were ardent to protect the trade route of the Nile, which prompted the British government to annex Buganda and adjoining territories to create the Uganda Protectorate in 1894. So Uganda Protectorate 1894 to 1962. This was the period. In 1893, the Imperial British East Africa Company transferred its administration rights of territory consisting mainly of the Kingdom of Buganda to the British government. The IBEAC relinquished its control over Uganda after Ugandan internal religious wars had driven it into bankruptcy. So the states of protectorate has significantly different consequences for Uganda. That had the region been made a colony like neighboring Kenya. Insofar as Uganda retained a degree of self-government that would have otherwise been limited under a full colonial administration. In the 1890s, 3,200 laborers from British India were recruited to East Africa under indentured labor contracts to construct the Uganda Railway. Most of the serving Indians returned home, but 6,724 decided to remain in East Africa after the line's completion. So लेबर इंडिया से आई थी, और वो फिर जब रेलवे का ट्रैक बन रहा था और रेलवे का प्रोजेक्ट बन रहा था, तो उसमें से 6,724 लोग जो हैं वो उधर ही रह गए थे. Subsequently, some became traders and took control of cotton ginning and sartorial retail. तो उन्होंने cotton ginning का business संभाला. And so from 19th century to 1920, a sleeping sickness epidemic in the southern part of Uganda. Acha, 1920 also there was an epidemic. Like now in 2020 also epidemic came. So this was also very dangerous. So that time also one epidemic came. So this was COVID-19. That time was also an epidemic which killed more than 250,000 people there in Uganda. So if we will talk about the independence in 1962 to 1965, Uganda gained independence from the UK on 9 October 1962 with Queen Elizabeth as head of state and Queen of Uganda. In October 1963, Uganda became a republic but maintained its membership in the Commonwealth of Nations. The first post-independence election held in 1962 was won by an alliance between the Uganda People Congress and Kabaka UPC and formed the first post-independence government with Milton as executive prime minister with the Buganda. So Buganda crisis 1962 to 1966. Uganda immediate post-independence year were dominated by the relationship between the central government and the largest regional kingdom, Buganda. So with Buganda there were divisions between those who wanted the Kabaka to remain a dominant monarch and those who wanted to join with the rest of Uganda to create a modern secular state. The split resulted in the creation of two different states. So the bitterness between these two parties was extremely intense, especially as the first elections for the post-colonial parliament approached. The Kabaka partially disliked the DP leader. So outside Buganda, a soft-spoken politician from northern Uganda, Milton Obote had as alliance of Buganda politicians to form the Uganda People Congress. The UPC at its heart was dominated by politicians. So if we will talk about the Uganda land, the land is very rich land. They have very good land. They have very good farming land, and they do crops there, and so they have very fertile land, and most of the people they do agricultural work there. They like to put agricultural and they like cattle farming also. So if we will talk about geographically, Uganda is located in the southeast Africa between latitude and between 30% of 35% longitude. Its geographically is very diverse, consisting of volcanic hills, mountains and lakes. The country sits as an average of 900 meters above sea level. Both the eastern and western borders of Uganda have maintained. The Rwenzori mountain range contains the highest peak in Uganda, which is named Alexandra and measures 5,094 meters. They have lakes, they have rivers. Much of the south of the country is heavily influenced by one of the world's biggest lakes, Lake Victoria, which contains many islands. The most important cities are located in the south near this lake, including the capital Kampala. and the nearby city is in Tiba. Lake Kyoga is the center of country and is surrounded by extensive marshy areas. Although landlocked, Uganda contains many large lakes. Besides lakes Victoria and Kyoga, there are Lake Albert also. So Uganda has 60 protected areas, including 10 national parks. Uganda is home to a vast number of species, including a populace of mountain gorillas in the national parks, and they have monkeys. So they have everything. So the country has the country had a 2019 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score 4.36, ranking its 128th globally out of 172 countries. So if we will talk about the corruption, Transparency International has rated Uganda public sector as one of the most corrupt in the world. In 2016, Uganda ranked 151st best out of 176 and had a score of 25 on a scale from most corrupt. The World Bank 2015 Worldwide Governance Indicators ranked Uganda in the worst 12 percentile. So they got the corruption. Corruption is the main reason why there is a violation of human rights. There are many areas which continue to attract concern when it comes to human rights in Uganda. Conflict in the northern parts of the country continues to generate reports of abuses by both the Labor Lord Resistance Army and led by Joseph Kony and the Ugandan Army. A UN official accused the LRA in February 2009 of appalling brutally in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The number of internally displaced persons is estimated like 1.4 million. Torture continues to be widespread practice among security organizations. Attacks on political freedom in the country, including the arrest and beating of opposition members of parliament, have led to international criticism, culminating in May 2005 in a decision by the British government to withhold part of its aid to the country. The arrest of the main opposition leader Kizza Besigye and the siege of the High Court during heavy armed security forces. Child labor is common in Uganda. Many child workers are active in agriculture. Children who worked on tobacco farms in Uganda are exposed to health hazard. Child domestic servants in Uganda risk sexual abuse also. Trafficking of children occurs. Slavery and forced labor are prohibited by the Ugandan constitutions. The U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants reported several violations of refugee rights in 2007, including forcible deportation by the Ugandan government and violence directed against refugees. So, in September 2009, Museveni refused Kabaka, the Uganda king, permission to visit some areas of Uganda kingdom, partially the Kyoga district. Riots occurred and over 40 people were killed while others still remain in prisons. So there is a human violation, but some areas they have a constitution system and they are under the law. So on 21 March 2023, the Ugandan parliament passed a bill that would make identifying as homosexual punishable by life in prison and the death penalty for anyone found guilty of homosexuality aggravated.